Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Amir, and a warm welcome to all of you joining us today on the occasion of International Day for the Conservation of Mangrove Ecosystems. Mangroves are nature's frontline defenders, shielding coastlines, storing carbon, nurturing biodiversity, and supporting livelihood. Today's webinar is not just a discussion, it is going to be a call for awareness, action, and resilience. Today's webinar is hosted by EICB Center, Wildlife Institute of India, in collaboration with the Uttarakhand State Biodiversity Board. And it is my honor to introduce our esteemed speaker for the session, Dr. Debajit Datta. Dr. Datta is an associate professor in the Department of Geography, Faculty of Science at Jadavpur University, Kolkata. With over 16 years of dedicated research, his work lies in intersection of landscape ecology, environmental geography, and socio-ecological transformation. He holds a PhD from IIT Kharagpur, and his academic journey spans Presidency College, the University of Calcutta, and now one of the India's leading institutions, Jadavpur University. His research explores critical themes such as blue carbon modeling, mangrove ecosystem services, coastal sustainability, and forest management, making him a true champion of coastal resilience. With over 80 peer-reviewed publications, numerous research grants, and leadership roles in ecological geographical associations, Dr. Datta brings both depth and clarity to today's theme. He currently serves as the secretary of the Indian Regional Association for Landscape Ecology and is a board member and regional contact for South Asia with the Asian Geographical Association Young Geographers Working Group. So we are very thrilled to have you with us, and Sir is going to share we have, like the topic which we had decided is a social ecological restoration approach for the settlement-fringe mangroves of Indian Sundarbans, strategies towards a resilient landscape. And for all the viewers who are watching us on YouTube, so there is going to be a small question answer session at the end of the talk. So if you have any suggestions, any questions, and if you want to say something, so you can put those things in the chat box of our YouTube. So without any further ado, please join me in welcoming Dr. Debajit Datta. Over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Lone. I think you can hear me properly.
Yes, definitely.
Yes. Yeah, it was a nice introduction. Thank you again. I'm thrilled to be present in this webinar and share whatever knowledge I have with you regarding this Shundurban landscape. So as you have already mentioned the title, so you can see that in the title I wanted to emphasize on primarily on three things you can find out. One is socio-ecological restoration, another is settlement-fringe mangrove, another is a resilient landscape. So let me just give you very brief introduction about these three things, then we will dive deeper into this topic. So restoration, ecological restoration, it is going on for the last 50 and 60 years, because what we have done to our ecosystem throughout the world in the last maybe 300 years, just after the industrial revolution, the environmental degradations have taken their pace, and as an answer to that, we started to restore our landscapes, maybe in a far lesser scale than the magnitude of this degradation, but we have started this thing maybe say 50-60 years back. But most of those restoration approaches, which are primarily coming from ecologists, environmentalists, they didn't see that kind of success. That means we were having some gaps. Only in the last 20-30 years, we are having a new, I would say it's a new paradigm, because still it is a paradigm which has not spread throughout masses, but we are gradually understanding the importance of having a social dimension also to this ecological restoration. That means most of the degraded areas throughout the world, they are socially vulnerable also. So if we do not focus, or if we do not merge these two things, the social needs and ecological needs together, maybe our restoration approaches will fall short of their targets. So today I want to focus on this social ecological restoration approach. This is the approach which will be applied, or which is going to be applied in the areas called settlement fringe mangroves. I will introduce you what do I actually mean by settlement fringe mangroves, because most of the people who are listening here, the Shundarbans is a very common term. They know, they study it from their primary geography textbooks, primary level geography textbooks. But what are specifically settlement fringe mangroves, and why we are focusing on that? I will try to discuss this thing. And my goal will be to have a resilient landscape. As a landscape scientist, a landscape ecologist, we understand that nature works in a comprehensive manner, in an integrated fashion. If we do not think nature as a whole, as a single, as a holistic thing, we may not be able to do justice to our conservation, to our management, to our day-to-day activities of working with nature. And if we do not have that thing, maybe the utilization of nature in the for the future generations will be little bit impossible. So with this introduction, I am starting my topic. And already you have Mr. Lone has actually introduced what are mangroves, and I don't think mangroves need any further introduction. Everyone here knows these things. But here we are today we are talking about something part of this entire mangrove gamut, that is the village fringe mangroves. If you look at the map of the world, in coastal Amazon, you will find mangroves. In the southern Florida, you will find mangroves. In many parts of Africa, you will find mangroves in Southeast Asia and in South Asia also. But what are unique about the mangroves of South Asia and Southeast Asia is that the human settlements and mangroves, in many areas, they are interspersed. That means you cannot separate a small mangrove patch from that of the settlement. These mangroves have grown up in the river banks, along the river banks, in the side of the villages, maybe in a new tidal mudflat which has just raised above the sea or above the river water level. These areas are the traditional, you can say, traditional livelihood areas of these village people. For centuries they have utilized these things. I would not say in a sustainable manner, because if this were the utilizations were sustainable, then we should not have discussed this thing today in today's webinar. But these were the primary livelihood areas. Apart from that, there are vast areas where you will find continuous stretches of mangroves. If we look at Shundarbans also, there are continuous stretches of mangroves which are under the jurisdiction of either the state government or the national level governments, and designated as wildlife sanctuaries, national parks. Today we are not talking about these things. We are talking about areas, mangrove areas beyond these protected areas, mangrove sites beyond these protected areas, which are often overlooked in our traditional sector-based management approaches or management activities. And since they are many times they remain outside of our mainstream management approaches, they are the most vulnerable areas. Although they provide many things, just like the conserved or this I would say that mangroves under national and state level protection, they have all these ecosystem services. But along with that, they have these non-timber forest products also. Why I am separating these non-timber forest products, this service particularly from for these village fringe mangroves from the other traditionally conserved mangroves? Because say if we take the example of Indian Sundarbans, utilizing any forest resource in terms of timber or wax or any part of the mangrove tree is legally banned. Just like any other national park, we cannot extract these resources. But at the same time, the indigenous communities of these areas, they are utilizing these resources. Now, after the creation of these protected areas, these nationally conserved areas, these areas, that means the people, they cannot extract resources from these areas. So they solely rely on the village fringe for mangroves, which are outside of these protected areas. And along with all these services, they have these non-timber forest products also. If we look at Sundarbans map, this is just a very simple depiction of a region called Shundurban Biosphere Reserve. It has an area of 9,600 square kilometer. I'm talking about only the Indian part, because the actual Shundurban spans both over Bangladesh and India, and Bangladesh has almost 2.5 times greater amount of mangroves than India. But in Indian part, what you are seeing on the screen, this is the Shundurban Biosphere Reserve, which is primarily demarcated by this dotted line. It was demarcated way back in the 1870s by these two cartographers. But you can understand from this map that the forested areas, which are at different shades of green, they are not that much. There is a huge area, almost more than 5,400 square kilometer, which are inhabited by humans. Only some 4,000, 4,300 square kilometers are forested areas. And even within those forested areas, that means the areas with mangrove cover, there are classifications. The deep green foliage color, this is the national park area where all kind of economic activities are forbidden. Then we have some wildlife sanctuaries also in the Sundarbans with that olive kind of green color. 3 wildlife sanctuaries we have. Just like any other wildlife sanctuary in the country, that means human entering and movement are considered as trespassing. Beyond that, we have reserve forest where human activities are not totally banned but regulated. But in case of Sundarbans, it is, you can say it is almost banned, because mangrove woods, they in general they don't have that much value because most of the time they remain wet. So mangroves have economic values from other perspectives, maybe from medicinal plants, maybe from gums, maybe from resins, maybe from the production of tannins, wax, honey. These are the products coming from the mangroves. And there are many products coming from the faunal side also. Fishes, different types of crustaceans like prawns, crabs, many things. So harvesting of these things are totally banned in these three kind of shaded areas you are seeing. Only the last green shade, the pale green shade you are seeing at the bottom of the legend, that is the protected forest. And in the map, I don't know how much you can see in that your screen, but these pale green areas, they are lesser in amount, maybe less than 1,000 square kilometer within the Indian Sundarban Biosphere Reserve, but they are spread across this entire area, primarily along a southwest to northeast gradient. You can see, and you can understand from this map that they are actually the mostly the village fringe mangroves, because all these are inhabited areas. Adjacent to the inhabited areas, as I was saying, maybe along the river banks, maybe between two villages in a low-lying area, in a maybe within a tidal inlet, maybe in a mud flat, they have grown up. Now you can, as you can see that as we are talking about different ecosystem services of mangroves, and one of the most important ecosystem service of mangrove is the protective function. It protects the inland areas from storm surges, the furies of cyclones. And as the map says, that most of these inhabited areas, human dominated areas, they don't have any coastal protection of these mangroves, because apart from these area, you can see that the southwestern portion, they don't have those what should I say, that officially the conservation areas, they are outside these conservation areas, and they are open to the furies of cyclones. So in this condition, sustainable management of these village fringe mangroves becomes imperative. Here I am showing you just some glimpses of what a cyclone does to these areas where there are not proper mangrove covers. You see embankments, these are the mud embankments. Throughout the Sundarbans, in these islands, there are 106 islands. In these islands, you will see mud embankments which are actually circumventing the islands, so that the saline water doesn't enter the village interiors. And within the embankments, people actually harvest rainwater. They store rainwater, and with this fresh water, they carry on their daily activities. So if these embankments are breached, saline water will enter. Along with saline water, all other pollutants will also enter the village areas and destroy the agricultural fields. And these things happen during the cyclones because of the storm surges. These are just these are the pictures just at the aftermath of the cyclone Islight, which happened in 2009, and it was a devastating cyclone for the entire Shundurban landscape. Just to show you the devastating potential of the cyclones, it is this picture. It was taken from a pond within a village area, almost in the central position of an island. And if you are able to see that fishes are lying on the ground, that means the fishes, these are freshwater fishes, the fishes which were within the water during the cyclones, this cyclonic wind, all the fish, water and fish, they were taken up from the water, and in a spiral motion they were thrown outside this pond and spread in the adjacent lands. Why I am showing it? Just to make you understand that what can happen if we do not have protection. Protections can be natural, protections can be artificial. Just like in the Netherlands, they have these boulder lands which are behind the concrete embankments. That is an artificial protection. But they have money to do that thing. In countries of South and Southeast Asia, we do not have such kind of money. In that condition, we have to rely on natural protective shields. And as you all know, mangroves are the bioshields, the bioprotectors of this kind of low-lying areas. So our focus today is on these village fringe mangroves, which are actually the saviors of these millions of people living in these areas. Okay, so to understand that what is happening in these village fringe areas, because I have just shown you some photographs of vulnerabilities, that what has happened, what are the devastations. Now the level of devastation, the magnitude, the extent of devastations are not spatially uniform, homogeneous. There are differences. So as a landscape ecologist, one of my primary research question was that what are the types of spatial heterogeneity in this kind of devastations? Is there any zonal characteristics? Is there any pattern in this apparent chaos? So to understand that thing, we made a very simple study, a very simple geospatial study, where we have actually selected one part of the Indian Sundarbans. You can say it is the southwestern part of Sundarban, and we divided it into three zones based on different hydrodynamic parameters: southwest zone, central zone, and northeast zone. From each of the zones, we have selected at least three, maybe four sites. So total 10 sites we have chosen. All the sites are actually village fringe mangroves. What you are seeing in the screen, in these green colored areas with the red border, these are the designated plantation or ecological restoration areas of these village fringe mangroves. So total 10 sites we have chosen from the three zones, and we wanted to study that how these plantations were so-called, I'm using this thing, quote unquote, ecological restoration is going on for the last 40 years. Along with the restoration, cyclones are also occurring. So based on the IMD's classification, we have only considered the cyclones which are beyond the very severe cyclones. That means cyclones with at least 118 kilometer per hour speed. Cyclones have two kinds of speeds. One is the you can say the linear translational speed of the cyclone. Another is the rotational speed. So rotational speed we generally consider when we think of the devastating potential of the mangrove. So here by 118 kilometer per hour, I am talking about the rotational speed. So from the database, we found that in the last 30 years, these are the major 5 cyclones which can be considered at least very severe. It may be beyond that extremely severe. It may be super cyclones also. So these are the 5 cyclones, and what we did, as I told you, it's a very simple geospatial study. We collected satellite images, multispectral satellite images, just before the cyclone and after the cyclone. You can say 2 months plus minus. of the cyclones, because we could not we didn't purposefully, we didn't take satellite images just after the cyclone, because what happens after the cyclone, for few weeks the sky remains that means clouded. Okay, so these clouded condition is not suitable for acquiring or good quality multispectral images. So we waited for the sky to be overcast condition to be cleared, and then we collected the images and we analyzed these images. For each cyclone, pre and post cyclone phases were studied from these multispectral images, and we actually used one very simple spectral index. I think most of you here understand this thing. It is called normalized difference vegetation index, which actually you can say it is a proxy of vegetation health. Its value actually ranges from -1 to +1. As it moves towards +1, it shows healthy vegetation, as and if it goes below 0, that means it is no vegetation. So all the vegetation characteristics are in between, you can say 0 to +1. So we estimated the NDVI values for these sites, these 10 sites, for with respect to the 6 cyclones. Okay, and from that you can see we made this kind of maps where the gradual changes in the mangrove covers of these plantation areas, you can see that we have intentionally left out the inhabited areas, which are shown in the gray color, because that is not our objective. We have only taken the designated plantation areas and what are the changes happening in the intra plantation site banner. That means what is happening within the plantation site. That was our only focus, and we have primarily taken 4 classes based on NDVI, that is no mangrove, degraded mangrove, open mangrove, and dense mangrove, as you can see demarcated by 4 colors. So for all these zones, I will not go into the detail of these things. The statistics are also there. I'm not going into detail. I will tell you the gist of the things. If you can see these 3 maps of these different sites for the 3 zones, 2 primary things will become apparent to you. Earlier one was for the southwest zone, this is for the central zone, and this is for the northeastern zone. It is the most inland zone, then central zone is in between, and southwestern zone is the most coastal zone. The dense mangrove covers, they are gradually coming down throughout the years. The time span actually, you can say Bob 06, it is of 1998, and Amphan is of 2020 actually. So in this 30 years time span, we are considering Bob 06, because from 1990 to 2020, Bob 06 is the first very severe cyclone. So in these 30 years, the dense mangrove covers has in general have gradually come down. There are obviously exceptions. Exceptions means what we have seen here. Excuse me for a minute. Hello. 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 Sorry. Extremely sorry. One call from. Yeah. Okay. Let's continue. Uh, say let us take one example of this one cyclone like Ayla. What happened? This is the pre-cyclone image. You can see open mangrove cover, degraded mangrove cover, no mangrove cover. Just after the cyclone, the open mangrove cover is not there. There is no dense mangrove. After Ayla, there was almost 10 years gap. A bulbul cyclone came. You see the same site. It has again regained its dense mangrove cover. This is natural regeneration as well as human intervention. That means positive human intervention, because we are restoring these sites. So mangrove covers have come up. Again, the bulbul cyclone occurs, and after the cyclone, the mangrove cover is not there. From bulbul to Amphan, only 1 year gap. You see, within this short span of time, again, dense mangrove cover came up. But after the cyclone, again, dense mangrove cover is not there. So this kind of Ups and downs are there, but in general, the trend is for dense mangrove cover, it is lowering, and in place of the dense mangrove cover, open mangrove cover is increasing along with the huge extent of non-mangrove cover at all. That means we have designated areas for plantation, but most of the areas are remaining unplanted or non-planted. This growth of mangrove, dense mangrove, after the passage of one cyclone, it is totally a characteristic of natural regeneration. Whoever has studied an introduction of disturbance ecology, they know that it is the natural bouncing back say the natural capacity that natural ecosystems bounce back after any disturbance. They bounce back to their original posture. They regain their vitality. It is known, but then we have to consider the frequency of the disturbances as well as the magnitude of the disturbances. What we understood from this analysis is that if the frequency of the cyclones remain the same, these human dominated areas, these are plantations actually. So these plantations, which are not totally similar to the natural forest, even these plantations have the capacity to bounce back to its original posture, just like any natural ecosystem, although these are not totally natural ecosystems. If the magnitude of the disturbances remains same, then also the same thing happens. But the problem starts to occur when both the frequency and magnitude starts start to increase. Then these ecosystems, they do not get either sufficient time or sufficient you can say exposure for regeneration, sufficient material, sufficient input for regeneration. It is like stretching a rubber band. If you stretch the rubber band and leave the force, the rubber band will come to its original posture. But if you keep on stretching the rubber band, there is a threshold value. After that, the rubber band will be broken down. Rubber band will be torn down. So it cannot come back. The same thing happens in this kind of ecosystems. If by regional means or global means the cyclones either raise their intensity or their frequency, or in the say most alarming case, both the frequency and intensity or magnitude increase, then these plantations may not survive. So based on those findings, we understood that this is a simple statistical analysis of these things. I am not going into that. uh, we understood that the type of ecological restoration that is going on in these areas, they are not sustainable. Maybe there are sporadic cases of success, but success is not spread throughout the areas. So we need something new, some aspect, the aspects which are missing, we have to incorporate those aspects also into our restoration management perspective. And for that, based on the global studies, we understood that there are three primary pillars of these three primary aspects of this comprehensive management strategy. There has to be ecological considerations. That means you have to tackle the ecological issues of plantation. Obviously, these are village fringe areas, so there are economic issues. So economic considerations should be there, and ecological and economic, they are known to us for many years. We have considered those things, but right now throughout the world, most of the funding agencies, based on their experiences, the funding agencies which actually like IUCN or WWF or UNESCO, whoever actually say invest their funds in this kind of mangrove regeneration activities, they understood one thing, that sustainability of the institutions, the very institutions at the grassroots level which are responsible for managing these mangroves, their sustainability is also a question. if we cannot ensure that thing, if we do not take care of the institutional issues which happen at this community level or grassroots level, maybe the whole management initiative will fail, even after considering ecological and economic issues. So based on these ecological, economic and institutional issues, we should go for a new restoration paradigm. And you can say it is almost similar to the one health paradigm, which is primary. I think many of you know here, because the organizer of this webinar is Wildlife Institute of India along with the Uttarakhand State Biodiversity Board. That one health approach is actually coming from the thought that animal health, human health, and the health of ecosystems, they are not separated, they are entangled with each other. So One Health approach gives us that comprehensive framework. So based on this One Health approach and considering these three pillars of this One Health approach, we gave a new look towards the restoration paradigm of this village fringe mangroves. So first, let us talk about the ecological considerations. I will show you some photographs also. From that, you will understand what is the condition. But it is actually an ideal condition. The cross section, what you are seeing here, this is a very simple layout plan of an island village in Shundarbans. That we have rivers, or maybe the sea, the coast is here. Beyond that, we have earthen embankments. During the last 20 years, because of the devastations caused by these cyclones like Ayla or Amphan, people there under the pressure of politicians, media also, government has started to build up concrete embankments. This light gray colored ring you are seeing, this is the concrete embankment. In many villages they are there, but not throughout the Indian Sundarban. So you will see two layers of embankments. One is the old earthen embankment, another is the concrete embankment. Within these two embankments lies the settlement areas, where there are agricultural lands. The little bit highlands are used for building or building homes, and then there are ponds. Along with that, again, in the last 30 years, we are having another kind of economic activity. It is called aquaculture. Very if I have to be very specific, it is called brackish water aquaculture. Primarily, shrimps are cultivated in these aquacultural lands. So what people do to and this is economically a very lucrative activity. And for this brackish water aquaculture, what people do, they make some log gates within these embankments, and they allow or they regulate the flow of saline water, because these rivers and the coastal areas, they have saline water. They allow the sea water in a regulated manner to enter this brackish water aquaculture ponds, and when the ponds are filled, they close this in these log gates, and they cultivate the saline water prawns here. But this is a very debatable activity, because of this activity, many times the log gates remain open even during the time of cyclones, or they easily get breached and the whole village gets flooded with saline water. And as you can see in this layout, outside, these are the areas outside those embankments, and in many areas there are no mangroves. Also, these are designated areas for mangrove plantations. When government understood this thing, they started to plant mangroves, but in a I would say in a very generalistic manner. Same species, same kind of plantation activity, same kind of nurturing activity throughout the entire Sundarbans. What I want to mean by that is that they used only 2 or 3 species of mangroves. Their seedlings they have collected, they planted it in these areas. Only 2 or 3 species, although Sundarban has more than 40 species of mangroves. Only 2 or 3 species have been planted in these areas. Their plantation technique was also same, primarily the herringbone technique. That means they will construct some say channels, water channels, by which saline water will enter these muddy areas outside the embankments, and then they will spread just like the skeleton structure of a fish. They will spread across the mud banks, and the propagules will get saline water. One thing to keep in mind here is that just to say remove the confusion of many people, mangroves are not totally a saline species, because if they were so, they would have grown in the on the sea beaches themselves. But mangroves do not grow on the sea beaches. Mangrove is a brackish water species where there is ample mixture of fresh water and brackish water. So the tidal areas, tide dominated areas, are the ideal areas for mangrove regeneration. So we need both fresh water as well as saline water. So in these areas, governments planted the mangroves, and the results we have just seen, that most of these mangroves are not that much successful to retain their dense mangrove cover. Gradually, they are degrading. So to tackle these things, we from our field experiences we developed this one. This is again a very generic model, and I would say that it is a, you can see, it is a prototype like model, where when it has to be applied, it has to be applied purely in a site specific manner, because each and every site is unique. If we do not give proper consideration to the site and situation, mangrove plantations will fail, and along with that, there will be huge economic losses, both of the government, international funding bodies, as well as the labor and time of the local communities also who are engaged in these mangrove plantations. So while raising the mangroves of these in these village fringe areas, again three type of functions we have to take care of. First one is the protective function. That means the mangrove should be able to withstand the furies of cyclones, to disperse the storm surges. So for that, we need a very dense network of roots, trunks, and branches. This kind of structure is only possible when there is a multi-layered and multi-species forest. In ecology, we call it structural complexity of a forest. So the plantations, unlike the eucalyptus plantation, which can be seen throughout India, mangrove plantations cannot be raised in that manner. There has to be structural complexity where both ground vegetation, intermediate layer vegetation, and 2 or 3 layers of canopies should be there, which will be able to withstand the furies of cyclone. So these are the functions of the mangrove species which are planted just after the tidal inlets or rivers or tide dominated coastal areas, and in front of the, you can say, the old earthen mangrove embankments. So there we have to choose species very specifically which have shown good quality or good protective functions in field in different parts of mangroves. So we have to choose species very carefully, very judiciously, based on the local conditions. That means one species which has showing protective function in the coastal area may not be suitable for the same function in the inland areas. So species has to be chosen accordingly. So a mangrove belt in front of the old earthen embankment. Then we have another area where there are tidal inlets, there are in between the or low lying areas in between the old embankment and the new concrete embankment. Here we have to think of the habitat function also. By habitat, I am not only mentioning about or thinking about the habitat of flora. Whenever we talk about Sundarbans, people only think about the Royal Bengal tigers, but there are numerous other species apart from these tigers. Our plantations should be capable to harvest these different types of megafauna, starting from the monkeys to deers, wild boars, these turtles. Many things are there which should be sheltered here. Why I am talking about this thing? Because these monkeys or the birds, they are very important in dispersing the propagules of mangroves. Because of their activities, the as you know that mangroves have a special kind of germination capability. It is called viviparous germination, and in this type of germination, the propagules directly come the fall from the mangrove plants and get entangled within the or get anchored within the within the muds of the this mud flats. And these propagules have to be carried. They can be carried by the tidal water, they can be carried by birds and monkeys also. So we need a good amount of faunal presence in these plantations. As we are moving closer towards the settlement areas, the our mangrove plantation should have the capacity to address some economic needs, which are the traditional livelihood activities. That means we are not talking about cutting down the trees, but collecting the dry leaves, collecting the dry branches, maybe cultivating some medicinal plants, collection of barks, tannins, dyes, resins, these kind of things, and obviously wax and honey. These are the very important products of the mangroves of Sundarbans. So we have to allow this kind of utilization, because if there is no economic incentive, economic benefit coming out of these plantations, they will not be sustainable in the long run. The people living here, most of the people here are below the, they are marginal people living under the poverty level. So if we do not ensure some amount of livelihood generation from these plantations, they will not be sustainable. And beyond that concrete embankment, it can be followed with palm type or coconut type of trees, because they are suited with this kind of saline environment. We can have these aquaculture farms also. But what we are getting instead is that that these aquaculture farms, instead of being behind these concrete embankments, many times they actually moved beyond these concrete embankments. They destroy the old earthen embankment, and from this tidal inlet up to the concrete embankment, and many times say up to the village center also, these aquaculture farms are spread out. This has become a menace in Indian Sundarbans, these aquaculture farms. Just like many other areas of the coastal India, these aquaculture farms are ruining the environmental composure of Indian Sundarbans. And the furies of cyclones, the devastating potential of cyclones have increased manyfold because of the spread of these aquacultural farms. So what we prescribe is a multi-species, multi-layered mangrove strand. And this multi-layer doesn't only mean vertical layering, it is horizontal layering also, as you can see by three kind of mangrove belts within one cross section. Till now I was talking about, you can say, an intra-site characteristic, that what will be the structure of a mangrove plantation within a single site. That is primarily the composition of mangrove site. And I was talking, along with the composition, we have to talk about other two things. In landscape ecology, we say these are the three C's: composition, configuration, and connectivity. In composition, as I talked about, that there are three kinds of functions. Based on that, through intensive field work and literature, we have developed one inventory. You can see this is the coastal most southern zone, the coastal zone, where we have suggested these species for protective function, this group of species for habitat function, this group of species for economic function. Similarly, for other zones also we have suggested, but it doesn't mean that it is a say, what should I say, it is the same, it is a panacea, it is the single solution. No, this is just an inventory, and these inventory have to be modified, have to be amended based on space and time. This is just a, you can say, a general starting point from which we can go for site specific plantation activities. After securing this zonal plantation, we have to think of the spatial arrangement of the plantation. When we studied these effects of cyclones in different mangrove sites, we understood that most of the plantations, they failed because in many areas they thought about the composition, but the plantations were done by local communities in consultation with local NGOs or local forest officers. And most of the time, they don't have a spatial perspective. That means people of one plantation area, they are not aware of what is happening in another plantation area nearby, and they were not thinking of the shape and size of these plantations, that which kind of shape, size, association of plantations would be better, because in a landscape you see these single plantation sites, they act like patches. So patches do not act alone, they act in conjunction. So we have to think of the configuration of the spatial configuration, spatial arrangement of these plantations also. Size, their age effects, their association, and their adjacency. Many things we have to consider. You can see from the photographs that in many areas, when they have not considered these things, in some areas we have healthy mangroves, but in adjacent areas we have seen total destruction of mangroves, maybe with the same species also. So configuration also plays a very important role. Last but not the least is the connectivity aspect. Connectivity is very important regarding spread of plantations. If anyone reads any textbook on ecological restoration, they will they will come up with two primary approaches of ecological restoration. One is known as passive restoration, another is active restoration. In a nutshell, active restoration means where people actively take part in restoration. They plant the trees, they raise the trees, they nurture the whole plantation. In another end is the passive restoration, where there is no direct involvement of people. People just ensure, humans just ensure that the designated area for the plantation remains undisturbed, and they allow nature to take its own course. So through natural ecological activities, those areas again become forested again. Obviously it is a time consuming process, but if what we have seen throughout the world, that if passive restoration is followed, the plantations after some years, obviously it is a secondary succession, but after many years these secondary successions almost take the shape or almost become similar to that of the primary succession forest. So passive restoration is always good, but the question here is that we are talking about an entirely humanized landscape here, where just beside a forest thousands of people live. In a village there are 4,000 to 5,000 people in this kind of islands. Is passive restoration a viable option here? The question comes, and we have seen that no, passive restoration, although it is ideally a better option, but in our area it may not be a suitable one. We need active restoration, but by active restoration we do not mean that everywhere you have to plant mangroves by hand or by human say human process, human dominated processes. What we can have is that by connect I am showing it here, that you see this island where one mangrove plantation has been raised. If we can ensure that this mangrove plantation is a healthy one, and here also one mangrove plantation has been raised, if we can ensure their longevity, then what will happen, that these mangrove plantations will continuously send propagules to the nearby islands through hydrological connectivity. Healthy mangroves will send healthy propagules in a large number, and those propagules will colonize these new mud flat areas or vacant areas. But if the original plantation is not there, that not healthy, it will fail to supply good quality of mangroves. So we need healthy plantations and in a connected manner also. So if we can ensure that thing, we may not have to look for human induced plantation in nearby areas, because if there are healthy plantations in a recurrent manner, nature will take its own course, and all the intervening areas or all the in between areas, they will naturally get replanted. Deforestation will occur naturally. So connectivity becomes also becomes very important here. So these are the ecological conditions. I told you that I will show you some photographs. You can see here that this is one that kind of site where there is no plantation. In the other side there are mangrove plantations, but here no plantation, and the river is gradually coming towards the island. Riverbank erosion is occurring. In this site you can see there is mangrove plantation, but it is very easy to understand it is not that kind of plantation we are talking about. It is not multi-layered, it is not having this multi-species composition. It's primarily dominated by one species. If this thing continues, what you are seeing here, it is the coastal southernmost tip of the Sundarbans. You can see just after the that island, inhabited island, these are the remaining mangroves. They are neither capable of protecting themselves nor of the people living behind. But at the same, in nearby areas, we have some healthy mangroves. So many considerations are there. Local knowledge, local traditional knowledge, choice of site and situation, type of species, many things are there, and timing of plantation also. One very important aspect we observed during these studies is that when mangroves are planted in the convex bend of the river, you can say, understand that rivers here they are meandering. So meandering, any meandering thing has two type of bends. One is convex bend, another is a concave bend. If in the inner side of convex bend plantations are raised, they have more longevity than the concave ones. The reason is very simple. In the concave areas, the effect of tide and wave is more, so the areas get more exposure to the water, and the erosion is more, the silts get washed away. But it is a if it is a convex area, there is more deposition, so mangroves get time to settle down and the plantations become important. So this is just a simple example that what are the basic considerations, ecological considerations, when we are restoring the lost mangroves. After ecological considerations, we are looking at the second pillar, that is the economic considerations. If we go to those sites and see the composition of the committees or the people who are managing the mangroves, most of they are male dominated. But if you ask people there that who are the primary users of mangroves, you will find that primarily women are the users. They collect the leaves, the branches as fuel. As you can see in this one, it is to me it is a symbolic photograph, because this woman with a say sickle, she is going to cut down the mangroves, remaining mangroves, because this mangrove, it is a single or you can say a monospecies mangrove. It doesn't have any other economic value. So this woman will go there, cut down some branches, maybe one day she will cut down the trees also, and the area will become like this, because it will only be used as fuel wood after sufficient drying. So if these mangroves do not have, as I told earlier also, that non-timber forest product generation capacities, we cannot save these mangroves. One of the most pressing issue in these islands is the requirement of fuel. Just like any other household, they also need fuel sources. Now we have many centralized schemes, Ujala and other things, but many of the schemes fail to reach these remotest islands. So if we can say ensure alternate fuel sources, maybe that will be a benefit towards the survival of the mangrove plantations also. Other economic activities can also be raised. I am not going into detail. I'm giving some examples what can be done to raise the economic value of these plantations. Just keep in mind that we are not talking about the national parks or wildlife sanctuaries. There are no economic activities permissible. We are talking about these buffer forests, which are outside of these protected areas and which are totally dependent on the willingness of people for conservation. Suppose people in Sundarbans, they traditionally collect honey and wax from these mangroves, because one species of bees, they live there, they make their nest there, and from their from these beehives they collect honey and wax. After collecting, they sell it to the business city-based businessmen, and the businessmen take it to the forest department. They sell it, and the forest department takes it back to Kolkata, the metro city, and there we have processing plants, and from there you all of us get the bottled honey. But if this bottling, this is a very simple bottling process. If this can be established near to this village fringe forest, so some value addition can be done to these things, and the added value will directly go to these communities who actually need these things, who actually produce these things. They are at this time they are just the primary users, the primary harvesters. There is no addition. This is true for all other products you are seeing in this list here. If we are able to add some values, and these values go to the people there, then they will be more willing to conserve this forest. In this regard, in the last 10 years we are getting another dimension of economic consideration. This is the, you can say, the climate financing option. Mangroves are known as the storehouses of carbon, known as the blue carbon, specifically known as the blue carbon. And these mangroves, they sequester carbon 2 or 3 times more even than the rainforest, tropical rainforest. So if these plantations can be raised in a proper manner with a multi-species, multi-layered manner, and if we are able to estimate the carbon sequestered in these areas, and with this standardized estimate, if we can approach appropriate authorities, okay, because climate now, the Ministry of Climate, Forest, Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Government of India, they are also promoting climate finance. So if we can link up this thing, things are happening at the top, and people these people, these communities, they are doing things at the at very ground level. If we can link up these two things, then the benefits of this carbon trading mechanism, the carbon sequestering mechanism, can go to these people, and they will be benefited. We have to keep in mind one thing is that when we talk about gaining, say, carbon finance, okay, through plantation, carbon finance doesn't consider the carbon already stored in mangroves. That means the national park areas or wildlife sanctuary areas, they cannot be considered for carbon trading because they are already sequestered. Carbon trading means incremental growth. That means how much carbon has been stored in one site per year. So that increment we have to show. And by raising these plantations, actually we are contributing towards that incremental growth. So that value, that money, we have to channelize towards these communities who actually need this thing. Regarding economic consideration, what I mentioned earlier also, another pressing issue throughout the Sundarbans is the spread of the shrimp pornoculture, the brackish water aquaculture activities. At present, this is the layout. You see, I call themselves as the I call them as the blue desert, because there is water, but their landscape resembles a desert-like thing. There is no tree, nothing. Kilometer after kilometer you will find this kind of things. These landscapes are not at all sustainable. Forget about cyclones. Even high tides, during high tides these areas get flooded. They get, and there are acute problem of groundwater salinization. Many problems are there. I am not going into detail of that. So these kind of economic activities, what you are seeing here, it is just in the northern part of the Bay of Bengal, you see one after another aquaculture activities. This is from Google Earth. You can understand. This is not at all sustainable. So when we look at other areas of the world, because aquaculture is not a new activity, this brackish water aquaculture. In Southeast Asia, they faced these problems during the 1970s on also. But then they learned, and now they are turning towards something else. They call it integrated mangrove cum shrimp farming. They call it silvo fishery. That means both silviculture and shrimp farming going hand in hand. And this kind of layout they are prescribing. You see, along with protective mangrove belts, we have deep sea fishery here, we have brackish water aquaculture here, we have orchards here, and we have ecotourism here. So it is, you can say, one perfect example of that one health approach. We have to embrace this kind of approach. This is again just an example. It is not the single most solution. There may be other solutions also, but we have to we have to open our consciousness and to find out which option is suitable at which place and which time period. So these are the economic things we have to consider. The last, but I think the most important one, is the institutional consideration. In a place like Sundarbans, which is having huge amount of people living under the poverty level, no plantation activity will be successful if the institutional issues are not considered. What are institutional issues? I'm just giving you one example. Suppose in one plantation area, the central government or any international donor body has invested money, so that plantation project is for of 10 years tenure, maybe 20 years tenure. During this 10 or 20 years tenure, the project goes well, it is, the running is smooth, the people, the foresters, the NGO people, or the government officers, everybody is happy, and we get a healthy mangrove forest. But what happens after 20 years when the funding has stopped? The plantation has to be self-sufficient, or supposed to be self-sufficient at this point. The problem, real problem, starts after the completion of this project. Internal feuds among the communities based on class, caste, gender, petty political issues, the dominance of local elites, these things crop up, and the institution's foundation becomes shaky. They do not devote sufficient time, they do not retain sufficient capacity to look after these mangroves. So the mangroves, the plantations become unprotected, and then if it is unprotected in a country like India, it is open to everybody's exploitation. We call it the tragedy of the commons. And these mangroves gradually again degrade down. This has happened time after time in Indian Sundarbans. One major thing in Indian Sundarbans, unlike any other forest of say, since it is this webinar is organized by institutions from Uttarakhand. In Uttarakhand, you will find adjacent to the forest many indigenous communities who are living there maybe for thousands of years. They have intricate knowledge about the forest ecology. But in Sundarbans, you will be astonished to know that most of the people, maybe more than 95% of people, they are only living there for at most 150 years, not more than that. And the scheduled tribe people, unlike any other forest, the scheduled tribe people living in Sundarbans, they are not the aborigines, they are not the indigenous people of Sundarbans. They were brought up by the British to clear out the mangroves and initiate settlements in these areas, because at that time mangroves were considered as wastelands by the British people. So they were brought from the Jharkhand areas, the present day Jharkhand areas. So these people, that scheduled tribe people, they don't have that much knowledge, indigenous knowledge or traditional ecological knowledge of this forest. The most of the people in Sundarbans belong in the scheduled caste population, and they are again they were also brought down, but not as laborers, but as the supervisors or as the farmers in the second wave of migration. These scheduled caste people, they also do not have that much say connection with the forest. Only the tribal people, they use the forest, but the scheduled caste people, they do not use the forest. So this is the scenario for forest use. But if you look at the structure of the plantation committees, the forest protection committees, the structure is reverse here. Since the scheduled caste people, they are the farmer communities, they are little bit more educated, they are the rural elites, they have agricultural lands, and based on their economic clout, they are at the leadership positions of these communities. So when one decision has to be taken, one micro plan has to be prepared for the plan for these plantation areas, the decisions come from the scheduled caste peoples who are totally detached from the day-to-day forest utilization activities. So many times these decisions remain null and void. So there is no relationship between what is thought at the so-called community level and what is happening at ground. To overcome this thing, we have to look into these issues by ensuring that even after the completion of project, there should be one clause that the community has to manage this forest up to say 50 years or 60 years. This kind of clauses we need. We have to ensure women's participation. We have to ensure that the leadership position goes to the people who are the actual forest users. And then comes the issue of the usufruct sharing. The products we are getting from the forest, who will enjoy these? The benefits coming out of the forest, who will enjoy these? These issues have to be solved. Only then the plantations become sustainable. For in this perspective, the Forest Rights Act, implementation of Forest Rights Act could have, it is again one of my thought is that it could have been beneficial in these areas, but it is not, it has not been implemented in the Sundarbans. Obviously there are reasons from the government sides also. Actually in Forest Rights Act there are two types of rights. One is the habitat right, that means if you are a say resident of a forest area, you will be given patta to live in that land or to build your house. The government says that, and rightly says that in Shundurban the forest areas and the village areas are separate, so there is no Bana Basti in Shundurban. So there is no question of giving habitat rights. This is correct. But if we think of the other part of the rights, that is the livelihood right, that people can access the forest resources, this right can be given. This kind of tenure rights can be given. That means livelihood rights. But unfortunately, these kind of rights have not been given. Why it has not been given? If we ask the question, you will understand that the issue which is supposed to be ecological, raising mangroves, it becomes socio-political. There is a nexus between the politicians, urban politicians, rural politicians, and local elites and contractors throughout this region. If mangrove plantations are weak, there will be more and more need of concrete embankments and earthen embankments. If the contractors get the contract of making these embankments, they will erect it in a faulty posture. Whenever a cyclone or a high tide comes, these things will get broken down. Next year they will build it again. This cycle, this vicious cycle goes on and on in these troubled landscapes of Sundarbans. If we go for sustainable village fringe mangrove restoration, maybe we have to break down this cycle, vicious cycle. We do not know whether we will be able to do that, but our objective should be oriented towards that dimension only. That will be a stepping stone towards a sustainable future for this vulnerable area and fragile landscape. Thank you. So if you have any query, any doubt, or any suggestion also, because it is an ongoing activity, please feel free to mention this thing, and I'll be happy to discuss that thing with you. Thank you. Over to you, Mr. Amir.
Thank you very much, sir. So I'll just quickly go to the chat section and see if you have any questions.
Yes, yes.
I'm putting it on the display, sir. First
Yes,
question.
yes. Yeah,
Can you
I
see it?
am actually. 1 minute. Let me close the presentation. Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you elaborate on the potential concentrated impact? Okay. So first question is, can you elaborate on the potential connections on or interdependence between the Shundurban mangroves ecosystem and the Himalayan region, particularly in terms of environmental ecological health? Yes, obviously there is a connection. Very good question, I think. Say, I told you that Sundarban thrives on the brackish water. That means mix of fresh water and saline water. Now, from where the fresh water comes? Obviously, it comes from the glaciers of the Himalayas.
Mm,
In the Indian Sundarbans, it is actually losing. You see, the name is Sundarbans. It is the name, the word Sundar. It's coming from a tree, specific tree called Sundari tree. Okay, and it is a sweetwater loving tree. But if you go to the Indian Sundarbans right now, most probably you will not see this tree. It is almost locally extinct from Sundarbans. You
Sundar.
will see this tree in the Bangladesh portion of Sundarbans. Why? Because in the Indian Sundarbans, the freshwater supply has reduced. In the 17, that means in the 18th, early 18th century, there was an earthquake. Because of that, the Ganges, the flow of the Ganges tilted towards the Bangladesh area, the river Podda. So the Indian portion, we call it river Hooghly, the Indian distributary, that do not carry that much of fresh water. That was the natural cause.
Natural causes.
After that, in the last 100 years, what we have done, we are deforesting in Himalayas also. We have constructed huge amount of dams in Himalayas also, or in the foothills of Himalayas also. So because of that, freshwater flow has reduced in huge amount, and it has a direct toll on the mangroves of Sundarbans. And not only the plants, because plants can only survive if there is land. So the land has to come up from the ocean or from the river bed. So how
Yes.
will the land come up? By the influx of the sediments. So sediments are coming from upstream, and we have stopped the flow of the sediments.
Sediments.
The
Yes.
southern portion of the Sundarbans is suffering from huge amount of erosion. Accretion has become less, erosion has become more in the Sundarbans.
Wonderful. Thank you, sir. One more question I'll take. Mm, yeah, I'm putting it on display. Are there any native mangrove species in India that are especially under threat and require focused restoration efforts as of now?
Yes, yes, obviously. I just mentioned one, that is Heritaria forms. The local name is Sundari. This is one. And you see, by endangered or threatened species, it is location specific till now. We can say some are locally extinct or locally endangered, but in a pan-Indian basis, everything is not endangered. Okay, so in Sundarbans, the Heritaria forms is endangered. There is another called Phoenix paludosa. Okay, the local name is Hetal, that is also endangered. Then there is Nipa fruticans, it is a palm kind of tree that is also endangered, and many others are there. I am not naming it, and these are available over internet in scientific literature. But you may see it in Tamil Nadu also in say this Nipa in the Pichavaram. If you go, you may see it. So they are locally endangered.
Sure. So one more question: how can mangrove restoration be mainstreamed in India's climatic adaptations and coastal disaster risk reduction strategies, especially post cyclone events when they happen?
Yes, yes. As you have heard, I talked about one thing, that is climate finance. Okay,
Climate. Yeah.
so climate is the India government's climate finance. It is at present under the this called Rate Plus initiative. The international initiative is the Rate Plus. Under that, it is going on. But if you look at Rate Plus initiatives, it doesn't include the mangroves, the coastal forests within its ambit. Rate Plus is primarily for terrestrial forest. Now, why doesn't it consider? Because some people consider mangroves as wetland, some people consider it as forest, maybe coastal forest. So
Coastal.
it is not within the ambit of Rate Plus. Then there are other mechanisms also, or India government is thinking of introducing these things. So within that thing, we have to segregate between plantation and a forest. That means an existing forest. In existing forest, the climate finance or the carbon trading activities may not be that much suitable, because it is already having its ecosystem functions. It has other roles. But if it is a plantation activity and there are incremental growth of carbon, then it can be considered for international trading. There are two kinds of carbon trading. One is, I think many of you know, that
Yeah.
one is the voluntary trading, another is the compulsory, mandatory
Mhm.
activity. Okay, so in voluntary carbon trading, we can include this thing, and government is looking after this thing, that how can the existing laws and regulations be amended, and the mangrove plantations can be fitted within the scheme, the broader scheme of climate finance. And specifically, the central government, I think in 2018, they have introduced one program called MISHTI, MISHTI, I think. It's a mangrove initiative for, I am not sure of the total full name, but
It's
mangrove
all right.
initiative for sustainable livelihood and species protection, something like that, or the coastal protection, something like that. So every state can participate in that, and from there they can get funds also.
France. That's right. Okay, wonderful. So, like you were saying, this like we have to break this vicious cycle of like with the communities and the policymakers. So, there's a question with respect to that. So, I mean, with the local communities, how do you find that there are like effects to, are there effective ways to motivate local communities to go for long term
Yes.
mangrove conservation?
Again, a very
Yeah,
good question, and these things are mentioned in my slide, but since
yeah,
I have already crossed the time, I didn't
it's okay,
delve
it's
in
okay,
detail.
it's okay.
Okay, but you can say in a very simple word, very simple phrase actually, nothing
Mhm.
succeeds like success. So success stories, these are the, you can say, uh, the input, the intervention, the positive interventions to break down this nexus or this vicious cycle. That there should be some success stories where judicious leadership has continued the mangrove plantation even after the completion of the programs, and the
Yeah,
usufruct sharing is going on in a tangible and just manner. If the social justice is ensured, and people see this thing, not only a healthy mangrove plantation is not a sign of success. Beyond the mangrove plantation, are the people healthy also? Are they getting the livelihood? So if all these things are there, na, these things will spread. The word of mouth strategy will be enough. And if these plantations are there, as I mentioned, in many areas you do not need active restoration.
yeah.
Nature will take its own course. Plantations will automatically, or not plantations, that means new mangrove covers will automatically come up, because mangrove is a very resilient species.
Yes.
Okay, what we are seeing, many people will say that mangroves are getting destroyed. I beg to differ. If you say read global literature, you will find mangroves are not getting destroyed. Mangroves are shifting. Mangroves are migrating. In
Yeah.
general, in coastal wetlands, if it is a tropical area, the annual average temperature is above 27 degree, mangroves grow. When the temperature comes down below than that, and that means we move from the tropics to the subtropics and then the temperate areas, the same kind of coastal wetlands get covered by salt marshes.
So
Now we are seeing there are global evidences that mangroves are moving northward and southward in the two sides of the equator. Okay, or you can say to the sides of the tropics, and they are invading the coastal marshes. And coastal marshes are shifting towards the poles. So this is poleward migration of mangroves going on. So mangroves will survive, but they will not survive in their original habitats.
yeah, yeah. So this is one more question I wanted to ask you, since we share something very very close, because I being I have also I mean I am also a student of geography, so that's why I wanted
Okay,
to ask you this. So I'll
nice
just
to
put it
know.
over there. Yeah. I mean, I've
Yes,
seen people
exactly.
ask. I've seen people
Exactly.
asking
That
me how do you end up with the wildlife while
no,
studying geography?
no. I am not a wildlife scientist at all. But you can
No, no.
say I'm a student of landscape ecology, and
Yeah,
this field I find it very much fascinating, because it is truly an interdisciplinary field. What is a landscape? It is not landform. It is not nature as it is. A landscape is an area, natural area carved and molded by human activities, and there is a component of space integrated within it. So landscapes are heterogeneous. In a very basic way, when you read landscape ecology textbook, these are there. So to study heterogeneity, you have to have knowledge of geography. You have to have knowledge of remote sensing or geospatial science, and obviously wildlife. We have to
Yeah.
conserve them, and as I show that habitat function is one of the main functions of the mangroves. This should be the function of the mangrove plantation. So they are part of the ecosystems, and we have to think of that. And obviously, as Mr. Lone will know that there is a subject already in our geography
Yeah.
called biogeography. Both the
Exactly.
zoologists and the geographers, they study these things. So we
Exactly.
already had a bridge, but now we have strengthened the bridge. We have concretized the bridge by naming it landscape ecology. We took biogeography and made it an application-oriented subject.
Application oriented. Yes. Yes. Thank you very much, sir. For this one, so I just wanted to ask you, sir, if there will be just
Yeah,
something that from your side, a parting message or something like that, that our audience would, it would be like a takeaway for our audience. What would it be with respect to the mangroves and the ecosystem restoration? I
yeah.
mean, in their restoration.
Okay, putting aside the mangroves and other things, I may not be the right one because I think many practitioners are listening to this thing. They are the champions actually who are doing works on the ground. We just study something. Okay, maybe passion, maybe from profession also. But my not suggestion, but my thought is that always try to bring your passion within your profession. When these two things meet together and look for a noble cause, okay, we will achieve success.
Wonderful. Wonderful, sir. So I think that's it from the questions section. Yeah, that's it. So yeah, thank you very much, sir. So I'll be my privilege to extend a
Thank you. Thank you.
heartfelt
It was a
vote of
pleasure.
thanks. Heartfelt vote of thanks, and
And
first and
even after
foremost,
this, if you have any questions, please. Yeah. Thank you.
sure, sure,
Yes,
sure,
yes.
done, done.
Any
I
questions
will.
are there, you can mail me, and I'll be happy to answer all these things.
Yes, 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 sir. As
Thank you.
because
Thank you.
I had earlier said that
So
this is
I
going to be
think,
on YouTube.
yeah, I can leave.
Yeah, this is going to be on YouTube, so people can post their
YouTube
questions over
also.
there if
So
you have any
please send,
questions.
please
Yeah,
send me the link.
yeah.
Yeah,
I'll share it with
and
you.
please send me the link
So
also.
sure, sure, sir.
Okay.
So as we conclude
Okay.
today's insightful session, so
Okay.
I'll be
Thank you.
privileged to
Yeah. Thank
extend a
thank you,
heartfelt vote of
everybody, for
thanks.
listening to me.
Yeah, thank you, sir. And a sincere gratitude to Dr. Debajit Datta for sharing his deep knowledge and vision on mangrove conservation and coastal resilience. And a big thank you to Uttarakhand State Biodiversity Board for bringing this important conservation to the forefront of such significant occasion. And to all participants, thank you for your active engagement, thoughtful questions, and your time. And let's carry forward learning forward. Let's carry today's learning forward and continue to be stewards of change. Thank you and stay connected for more such meaningful dialogues. And stay safe. Thank you very much. Thank you again, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you very much.